What's up, Deckheads? Welcome back to MTG with me. It's the Gainswalker. Looks like all the cards have been spoiled for Wilds of Eldraine, so I'm going to go ahead and do a tier list for you of all of the mythic rares that are in the set. I've got my tier list off of Tier Maker. Looks like there's only 20 mythic rares in the set. Some of them are pretty good. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Fairly new channel, free-to-play player, and really does help the channel if you like the video, and if you haven't already, definitely subscribe. First one we're going to be talking about here. This one helps with activated abilities. This one is Agatha, Vile Cauldron. It is a 1/1 for 2. Activated abilities creatures cost X less, but not less than 1. It's got its own activated ability for 6, where other creatures get +1/+1 and gain trample and haste until end of turn. So I think that would be really good in a Gruul deck. It's like specific CMC Gruul by turn 2. So I don't see any other deck that you'd want to put that in that you'd have that in your hand and kind of be stuck with on turn 2 if you couldn't play it. So I think it's good for what it is. Hopefully somebody can make something around that and really get some value out of it. It is a legendary, so you can only really have one. But I'm gonna say that's B tier. Next one's pretty interesting. This is an artifact, but the artifact is dealing with +1/+1 counters, but it also allows you to get +1/+1 counters out. So there's some playability to it. It's very low CMC. Agatha's Soul Cauldron. It's a 2-drop. Spend manas, though it were mana of any color, to activate abilities of creatures you control. Creatures get +1/+1 counters, or sorry, creatures with +1/+1 counters on them have all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with this, and you can exile a target card from a graveyard. When a creature card is exiled this way, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Graveyard removal is huge in this set. There's plenty of decks that just focus on that. They're pitching stuff so they can play it for way cheaper cost and just kind of cheat those out from the graveyard. So there's a lot of different graveyard removal spells out there that target a lot of those. This is great because you can put it in any deck, right? So 2 to play, tap, remove a card from graveyard. So even if people are pitching by turn 2, you can kind of solve those problems pretty early. And you're putting +1/+1 counters out. So I like that. And I mean, the ability of getting all other abilities of all creature cards exiled with this is pretty neat. I'm gonna say this is S tier. I'm not entirely sure where people are gonna go with it, but I do think it's got, cheap CMC. You put it in any deck you want. Graveyard removal. These are all things that people are looking for right now. Next one is the Planeswalker in the set. This is Ashiok. 5-drop for 5. Its ability, as you play it, that's just on there. If you would pay life while your library has at least that many cards in it, exile that many cards from the top of your library instead. So this is kind of neat, right? Because the way that that's worded, if you were to pay life while your library has not that many cards in it, that could ruin you, right? So this kind of saves you a little bit in very unique circumstances. So I think that that's neat that they worded it that way. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, exile one of them, and put the other into your hand. That's your +1. -2 says create 2 1/1 Black Nightmare creature tokens with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if a card was put in exile this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. So I think that that's neat because, you're going to be exiling cards, but it also allows you to create creatures. Any Planeswalker that allows you to create a board state that can protect itself, that also benefits from the Planeswalker, I think that's really strong. I don't think this is an S tier Planeswalker, right? I don't think this is like a turn 3 Liliana that controls the pace of the game just right away. I think it's decent. So I'm going to say this is A tier, but I don't think it's S tier. Next one is Asinine Antics. This one's actually kind of interesting. This is a 4-drop. You may cast it as though it had flash if you pay it for 2, so it could be a 6-drop instant. For each creature your opponents control, create a cursed roll token attached to that creature, which just makes them a 1/1. They still have the abilities that they have, but you're also creating that many enchantment tokens that you'll have, and those count as permanents for you. So there's definitely some other things you can do with that. One of the other mechanics in this set is called Bargain, where you can sacrifice a token, so one of those, an enchantment, also those, or an artifact to kind of get that extra ability or effect of a card. So I think that's really interesting. Mono blue is definitely going to use that, but I think that's going to be more used in like an Esper control. I have a very strong suspicion Esper control is going to come out the gate strong with this set. So I'm going to say I want to say S tier because I mean it's a little expensive. 6-drop to do it at instant speed, but you don't have to. Right? You could play that in like a Simic deck, play it on turn 4 and swing through, just making those 1/1s and using your trample, you know what I mean? So that's I'm gonna say S tier. Alright, next one. This one is a giant. This is a rug card. Alright, so Beluna Grand Squall. Instant speed, mill 7 cards, put all adventure cards into your hand, and I mean that's a 5-drop. Or you can play it for 3, which is its 4/4 trample. So 3 for a 4/4 trample. It's already great, right? Solid card. Permanent spells you cast that have an adventure cost 1 less to cast. That's amazing. There's so many adventure cards that you can use. This makes it even more playable. Turn 3 for a 4/4 trample is like, this is great all the way around. I mean, maybe you could have made that adventure a little bit better, but it is instant speed, right? So it's all about how you're playing. With a rug card, you have ramp, you have control, so you can absolutely use this. I think this is going to be A tier, if not S. I think it's going to be S tier. Simic is already disgusting with a lot of stuff. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it. Well, some of those other ones are really good. I'm gonna move it to A for now. I may move it back. I may. All right, the next one. This one's pretty interesting. Beseech the Mirror. This is a 4-drop bargain. Search your library for a card, exile it face down, then shuffle. If the spell is bargain, you may cast that exiled card without paying its mana cost if the spell's mana value is 4 or less. So, and then if you don't, put the exiled card into your hand. But this is just going along the same theme that everybody's been playing, where they're just going to cheat stuff out from the graveyard. It's interesting. I don't think it's crazy S tier, but it is just along the same lines of just resilience in replaying things from your graveyard, cheating mana costs. So I think that's going to be at least an A tier. Next one is a turtle. This one's kind of interesting. I think somebody's going to make a land deck, probably a Naya land deck, if I had to guess, because some of the lands in the set have a creature aspect to them that, they're activated abilities. So you could turn it into a creature swing with it, which is awesome. I love seeing those in rotation because it helps against all of those decks that are just board wipe everything, and make the game just go forever. I mean, it's a strategy, okay, I'll give you that. Like, it can be efficient. But I just don't think it's a very strong strategy either way. Blossoming Tortoise, this is a 4-drop 3/3. So a little light on that end. But land creatures get +1/+1, so it's kind of like an Anthem. Buffs them up. ETB or attack, mill 3 cards, return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield, tap. So it also has some ramp to it. A little interesting. And then activated abilities of lands you control cost 1 less to activate. Also neat. So I think that'll probably be in like a Naya land deck. At least B tier is a little specific CMC. But I'm going to say B tier. Alright, next one. This is... probably going to say that wrong. Area of the Charmed Apple. This is a 3-drop 2/4. Each creature that's enchanted by an aura you control can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is the number of auras you control. Speaking of control, how about Esper Control turn 3 this, turn 4 Asinine Antics? Right? You do this turn 3, you got your 2/4. You do Asinine Antics if you're running against mono red and they get a bunch of creatures out. Yeah, it's not going to really change them. A lot of those are just 1/1s anyway, but they're going to get hurt each turn for that. So, and even if it's just mid to late game and you throw that down, I think there's a lot of value for that. All those enchantment tokens that you're making through all kinds of cards in the set, I think that's really going to help this. So definitely something to look out for. As far as S tier, I don't know. I don't think it's S tier. It's probably the same level as Ashiok, so I'm gonna go A tier. Next one, this is pretty interesting. This one, it's all about tapping down. So Hilda of the Icy Crown, 4-drop 3/4. Whenever you tap an untapped creature an opponent controls, you may pay 1. When you do, choose one. You either create a 4/4 white and blue elemental, or put +1/+1 counter on each creature control, or scry 2, draw a card. I love all of those options. Those are all great things. Don't have a creature? Make one. Don't have cards in your hand? Get some. Like, you have stuff out? Make them better. That's very good. I think that's going to be very awesome. Azurius might have a benefit here. I think you'll see it in Esper Control. I think that's exactly what's going to happen there. But either way, I don't see anything wrong with this card. I mean, it's 4-drop for a 3/4. Okay. I'd rather that than a 4/3. With all these abilities, this is a solid card all the way around S tier. I don't see a problem with this card. Next one. This next one is an equipment card, which big fan towards equipment style decks, but you hardly see them anymore. Alright, so this is Kellen the Fey Blooded. 3-drop. For a 2/2 double strike, other creatures get +1/+0 for each aura and equipment attached to this. Now, it does have a little bit of a benefit because of those aura tokens, those enchantment tokens that are going to be used in the set. So you probably will be able to buff him up a good amount to buff your other creatures, but there's so much removal in standard. I don't think this is going to help you as much as you think it's going to. As far as Birthright Boom, that's not that bad for an adventure. It's 2-drop, sorcery speed, search library for an aura or an equipment card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle. Pretty nice adventure there. But I don't think this is an A tier. This is probably a B tier. Maybe C tier. Maybe. I'll be B. I'll say B to be nice. As far as the next one, I think this one is probably going to be overlooked because of its CMC. Moonshaker Cavalry. It's an 8-drop 6/6 flyer. Not great. But there is that Spirit Selesnya enchantment deck that could use this. Again, that CMC, a little spicy. But it has an ETB where creatures you control gain flying and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. That's also a spirit heavy deck. The 1-drop they use is a spirit. I think the 2-drop dog enchant. I think that's also a spirit. I'm not entirely sure. That might just be enchantment that draw the card on ETB. But it does use a bunch of spirits. Even the enchantment that kind of is the staple of that deck makes spirits equal to power toughness equal to the number of spirits you control. So it'll help in that fashion. I know they just got Calyx that really helped that set, but this might help. This might be a really good late game push. They don't really need a late game though, because the late game is the early game that they've built up on the board state to kind of push across. So I mean, they're probably not going to use this, but they could. As it stands though, it's probably a D tier. you know I'm nice, so I'll say C tier. Yeah. Next one. This one is weird. Realm Scorcher Hellkite is a 6-drop 4/6 flying haste. Cool. A little late game though. 6-drop for it. I think it's too late. I don't think people are going to really play this card. It does have bargain cost where, if it's bargain, add 4 mana in any combination of colors. So that's kind of neat, right? Unfortunately, you don't have a way to if you had a bunch of artifacts and stuff and you blink it a couple times, maybe you can get like a positive mana gain out of that. But that requires a bunch of things for that to work. So I don't think that that's great. If you do bargain it, you could get 2 more damage out of it because it's pumpable for 2, 1 red, 1 colorless, 1 damage to any target. So that 4 mana you get, you could do 2 if they have no other flyers to block. That could be 6 damage for 6, but that's pretty vanilla. I don't think that that's good. I'm gonna say, actually, you know what? If I'm saying that's C tier, then this is definitely D tier, the one before it. All right, Rowan and Will. Used to be a planeswalker, not anymore, but their creatures are pretty strong. I think Rowan's is a little bit better, just given what's already in standard. So Rowan, Scion of War. This is a 3-drop 4/2 menace. Okay, so already pretty solid. You can tap it for spells you cast this turn that are black or red, cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life you lost this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. You could do this main phase 2, right? Actually, you could probably do it main phase 1 if you wanted to, but with the Sheldred that does the life gain, right? So, every time you draw a card, you gain a life, or gain 2 life, and every time your opponent does, they lose 2 life. There's also the cards where you draw an additional card. I think it's like a 3-drop enchantment for mono black, where you lose life. But you lose life, and then you gain more life. So you could do something with this and those kinds of mechanics to kind of really get cheaper costs on your spells. So I think there's something there that can be done with it. I think this is a solid card. Early game, 4/2 for 3 and Menace. I'm already a fan, and somebody's going to find a way to make this amazing. So I'm going to say this is at least an A tier. All right. Next one, Talion the Kinley Lord. 4-drop 3/4. This is Dimir. Flying as Talon, the Kinley Lord, enters the battlefield. Choose a number between 1 and 10 whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value, power, or toughness equal to the chosen number. That player loses 2 life and you draw a card. The interesting part about this card is it says whenever an opponent casts a spell with the mana value, the power, or the toughness equal to the chosen number, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. That, because there's 3 separate parts of that makes this very interesting. I'm not entirely sure what the spread is on cards that fall into those categories, but it's definitely something to take note of, right? With like Blast Zone, I know that the Selesnya deck has a bunch of 2-drops. So I can pump that up to 2 and then get rid of the 2-drops at a very good time for me to get advantage on the board state. Similarly, the mono red, they're like all 1-drops, right? So I just got to get to turn 4 and boom, their board state's gone. But this is very interesting. It is a 4-drop, but it's flying 3/4, and it's got a very unique ability that's going to make a player have to really second guess their plays. So I think this is at least A tier. It might be S tier. I just don't know enough about the spread on those CMCs, powers, and toughness between 1 and 10 that you could really pick. So I don't know. But it's definitely A tier, if not S tier. These next ones are pretty cool. The red one, let's see. These are the virtue cards. This one I believe is Virtue of Courage. Alright, so the next 5 cards we're going to talk about are these Virtue cards. This one is Virtue of Courage. It's a 2-drop, deal 2 damage, and a 5-drop. You can basically, anytime you do non-combat damage to a player, you can exile that many cards off the top of your library and cast them, but it's not a cheaper mana cost. So you still have to have the mana for them. It is an enchantment, so you could play it, turn 6, really do something out of that, and I think Mono Red's going to love this. They're trying to win before turn 5, but I think that might help them later. I don't play a whole bunch of Mono Red, so I'm kind of guessing on their strategy there, but could be done. And I mean, it's not bad. 2 damage to any target for 2, that's pretty solid. And then 5 for that amount of enchantment. It's good. I think this is definitely A tier. As far as S tier, I don't know. That CMC might be too high for that. But I think I'll go A tier on that. Next one. Virtue of Knowledge is a 5-drop. Copy target activated or triggered ability. You may choose new targets for the copy, and then the card itself is a 5-drop. If a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, do it again. There are some cards that do that. One of the Elish Norns does that, but I don't see a lot of people playing this strategy. I mean, there was a Selesnya deck that kind of did that. There's like a snake creature that you could like copy an activated ability on the stack, and that's really great for those enchantment, exile this until this leaves the battlefield kind of cards, because you get multiple out real quickly. But this card, C tier. I don't think anybody's playing it. Somebody might play it. Alright, Virtue of Loyalty. This one is a 5-drop. Beginning of the end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, untap them. I like that. That's really strong. You might even have a mono white deck come out of this with this card. So, I mean, it's not a legendary. Like, I don't think any of those were legendary enchantments. So you could have multiples of them. Multiples of this one is crazy. And its 2-drop adventure cost is a 2/2 Knight with Vigilance for 2. That's pretty solid, you know? Instant speed, 2/2 Knight, love it. 5-drop, make your board state bigger, and mono white does that already. So I think that'll be really strong. I'm going to say A tier. Virtue of Persistence, 7-drop. At the beginning of your upkeep, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Really? I have more of this nonsense. We have to have graveyard removal to get around this stuff. Like, it kind of stinks that you have to put that in your deck, but at this, I mean, not even sideboard. You just have to assume, because there's so many decks, that you're going to need that. Target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. Gain 2 life for 2. Also not bad. That's the adventure. It's only a 2 cost for that. It's not too specific. It's a very high cost for that enchantment, which is good. A lot of the games in Standard, you're going to know if you're winning or losing by turn 4, 5. So this is definitely playable. I don't think it's S tier. I think it's A tier. They did a great job with the CMC on this. I think it's a solid A tier. Plus the -3/-3 stuff, those are pretty important. You don't see a lot of that stuff, but it is really good when you have a bunch of players that are doing indestructible. Like, that's one of the mechanics that I really love to use. But those -1/-1 counters, or -3 -X whatever, those are really powerful to remove what I'm doing. And so I hate to see them, but they're good cards. So, gotta give it that. Next one, Virtue of Strength, 7-drop. If you tap a basic land for mana, it produces 3 times that much for 7. It's a little bit late to produce a bunch of mana, which is why I don't like this card. that you should have already ramped up to get what you need out before turn 7. I think getting a bunch of ramp at turn 7 doesn't really help you. It's adventure though, return target creature or land card from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, for 1, that's not bad. And then, if you get this out late game, sure. I don't think that should have been a mythic. This doesn't look like a mythic. But I'm going to say that's a D tier. That doesn't look great. None of that looks good. I mean, early game for 1, there's going to be like nothing in your graveyard to pull from. I don't see this. I don't see this being good. And the last one is Will. This one, it's hard to tell. It's about life gain. It's a 3-drop 2/4. Okay. Vigilance. That's a plus. Tap spells you cast this turn that are white or blue cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. I like that better than Rowan's ability because you want to gain life. You want to have a higher life total. Now, if you win and your life total is 1, cool. If you win and your life total is 100, it's still a win. You know what I mean? So life gain's important. If you have alternate wins, that's probably better to have life gain, but I don't see that in standard right now. And spells you cast this turn that are white or blue, there's plenty of those that have life gain. So I like that. I think this will be useful. I don't think it'll be as useful as Rowan. So I'm going to say this is a B tier. I don't see many life gain decks, but I think it's good. For what it is, it's definitely good. And that's going to do it for this tier list. Very great set. This is something I've been excited for, and I think the drafts are going to be awesome. I think the in-person events are going to be really fun. There's a lot to work with in the set. It'll be interesting to see what decks are made. And as always, until next time, deckheads, keep it easy.